noviembre de 2022, la viceministra de Asuntos Multilaterales realizó el primer diálogo nacional para la formulación de una política exterior feminista, cuyos lineamientos serán incluidos en el Plan Nacional de Desarrollo, el cual, como les expliqué, es la hoja de ruta de todo gobierno nacional durante sus 4 años de gobierno. Posteriormente, el 24 de octubre del 2022, en un evento en que participaron la consejera presidencial para la equidad de la mujer y la vicepresidenta de Asuntos Multilaterales, la canciller de Noruega, la representante de país de ONU Mujeres y el jefe de la misión de verificación de la ONU, el gobierno de Colombia anunció que luego de 22 años de aprobada la resolución 1325 del Consejo de Seguridad de las Naciones Unidas, se dio inicio a la ruta para la construcción del Plan de Acción 1325, Mujer, Paz y Seguridad. Con esta visión queremos cambiar la forma en la que Colombia interactúa en el mundo, la forma en que nos proyectamos y, más allá de eso, la realidad del país en términos de inclusión, equidad, derechos humanos y paz. Queremos que esta política sea verdaderamente transformadora, gender transformative, que tenga en cuenta el enfoque interseccional para que con esta visión logremos llegar a las causas estructurales de la desigualdad. En la construcción de esta política reconocemos que tenemos grandes desafíos y brechas, pero nuestra ambición es poder transversalizar la visión de esta política en las demás entidades del Estado y en las acciones y decisiones de política exterior. Asimismo, durante la 9ª Cumbre de las Américas, realizada en junio de 2022, Colombia y Jamaica colideraron la resolución sobre el Programa Regional para la Transformación Digital, en donde se acordó, entre otras cosas, alentar en particular esta acción con relación a personas con discapacidad y con necesidades específicas, y a miembros de grupos que han sido históricamente marginados, discriminados y o en situación de vulnerabilidad, así como a todas las mujeres y niñas, tomando en cuenta sus condiciones y situaciones diversas, y de una manera consistente con la legislación nacional y el derecho internacional para la amplia utilización de las plataformas digitales. A su vez, Chile hizo un llamado a la necesidad de continuar fortaleciendo la Organización de los Estados Americanos para los desafíos del presente, tales como los debates en torno a la ciberseguridad y el cibercrimen desde una perspectiva de género. Esto nos lleva a un tema relacionado con género y la creación de capacidades. La semana pasada tuve la oportunidad de representar a Colombia en la 4ª reunión del Grupo de Trabajo sobre Cooperación y Medidas de Fomento a la Confianza en el Ciberespacio, en donde se presentó la creación de una nueva medida de fomento de cooperación y confianza en el ciberespacio, el cual tiene como fin fomentar y promover la inclusión, el liderazgo, la participación eficaz y significativa de las mujeres en el proceso de tomas de decisiones. Los avances también se observan en espacios multilaterales, como la Organización de Naciones Unidas, cifras que compartí con ustedes el día de ayer durante una intervención. Finalmente, en el COMPES 3995, que está vigente hasta este año, contamos con una acción específica para generar acciones para la formación de enfoque de género y por ello trabajamos de la mano con la OEA en programas como el Cyber Woman Challenge y el Colombian Hacker Girls Team. Finalmente, ya para irnos a las conclusiones, quisiera dejar 3 aspectos muy importantes. Primero, como Colombia y creo que como región, debemos realizar ajustes normativos en el marco del Convenio de Budapest y el segundo protocolo. Asimismo, nacionalmente tenemos que trabajar para evaluar los tipos penales de la Ley 1273 de 2009, que es nuestra ley de delitos cibernéticos, para una posible modificación y adición. Y por último, una mayor y una mejor capacidad de los actores del ecosistema de la seguridad digital. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Now let me turn to Khurshid. Thank you very much. I'd first like to acknowledge the Council of Europe for bringing us all together at this wonderful event. I see many faces that I remember pre-COVID. There's like 2 times in our life, pre-COVID and post-COVID. We don't know any other time, but I really thank you because in as much as we've learned a lot about the technical aspects of cybercrime, what was also very useful for me when I'm looking around this room is the interactions that we've been having, talking to each other, sharing information and, just learning best practices. It all started from the night of the dinner right up to today, where over coffee, over tea breaks, we've been sitting together and, over lunch and just sharing views with people from whether it's the Ukraine, brothers and sisters from Barbados and from all over the world. That was very, very helpful. And I remember I was having a conversation with one of my sisters from the Caribbean islands, and she had mentioned that an important point, that when you start looking at the challenges that policies and that policymakers face, we should always start with the legislation, and that legislation that needs to be reviewed often and from time to time. But I didn't want to launch into a speech today. I really wanted to share my practical information. We should always remember that not all of us come from developed countries. Some of us come from developing or underdeveloped countries, and I think it's important to realize this. Botswana is a country the size of France, roughly the size of France, so it's a huge land area, and we only have about 2 million people scattered across a very, very large piece of territory. So the challenges that we face may not necessarily be the same challenges as somebody from Belgium faces, for example. And one of the challenges we have is little national critical infrastructure in terms of, roads, ICT infrastructure. However, having said that, we must recognize the fact that we are now a global village. And with increased cell phone coverage, almost every member of the population, from children to adults to even the elderly population, all own a smartphone. And that has made us all one. We have all been able to interact with each other. So, with the issues of cybercrime, which is, as you all know, it's borderless and it's ever evolving. These are two aspects that we must remember. So I thought I should start with the example that I had from Botswana. In 2004, we were asked to draft a cyber crimes legislation for Botswana. And I was the person targeted. I don't know whether it's an opportunity or a challenge, but I think I regard it as a challenge. And, within a week, we had to come up with this convention, with this national legislation, and we had to benchmark against what we had in terms of conventions. And in 2004-05, there wasn't much to look at. So what I had to do is quickly go online, and we had a Commonwealth model law, which I'm sure many countries here are aware about. And we had to tailor-make it to quickly at least put in the basics. And we managed to do that, and we passed our Cybercrime and Computer-Related Crimes Act in 2005. It was drafted in 2005, it was passed in 2007. And then, there was silence for many years, because what we realized is that from our context, police, law enforcement had their hands full with so-called traditional crimes, rape, robbery, murders. So cybercrime was not something that was, it was actually outside the realm of the common person's understanding. But as we now have more cases of cyber fraud, cyberbullying, etc., there's now a need. It's been recognized as a need from the highest level that, we need these laws. And as a result, we have electronic evidence laws, we have electronic communication laws, like many of you. We have a data protection law. However, this doesn't come with certain challenges, because what we have is a very small IT unit, and traditional crimes, as I said, are prioritized. There's also a lack of fundamental understanding in relation to gender dynamics. Cybercrime, as we all know, affects both males and females, but the trend is that most statistics, especially in Botswana, shows that women, more often than not, form part of the victims of such crimes. So as a result, thanks to the Council of Europe's wonderful invitation in 2017-18 to attend the last Council of Europe Octopus meeting, which I attended, that gave me a framework to realize what we needed to improve upon. And as a result of that meeting specifically, we were able to review the legislation in 2018 and add offenses such as cyber harassment, cyber stalking, pornographic and obscene material crimes, offensive electronic communications, for example, unwanted messages and airdropping of obscene pics, for example. So this really helped, and that just demonstrates to you the fact that we need to more often than not rely on each other. If I can give the example of somebody in the UK, when it comes to, if you remember, there was a politician called Diane Abbott, and she was actually a UK Shadow Home Secretary, a member of Parliament. And when they checked the statistics, they found that nearly half the abusive tweets were sent to female MPs as opposed to male MPs, so deep fake pornography, for example. So that shows you that women are quite vulnerable. Now, when you look at now the challenges that we have and some of the recommendations that come from that challenge, training is something that we really need, both from a practical and implementation perspective. Our law enforcement officers, when we go, well, in terms of the Botswana context, I'm sure in other countries as well, everybody reaches for the penal code first. They look at what crimes are there. They have little understanding of cybercrime and computer-related acts. So what happens is that very few offenders get charged. We should also realize that we should benchmark with international organizations and best practice countries. So peer-to-peer conversations are very important. And this should also cover a wide range of stakeholders, right from the executive, from the cabinet, leaders, MPs, law enforcement, policymakers, practitioners, and more importantly, educational institutions. We need to include this in our curriculum at schools, from university right down to the preschool level. It is very, very, very important. We also recognize the need for mentorship. I'm attending this meeting when I go back to my country, and what all of us should do is talk about the fact that we attended this meeting, not take our documents and put them in our bookshelves, but actually talk and share the experiences and have that discussion and dialogue, you know. And also, we need to remember that we need to scrutinize international instruments and the laws of advanced jurisdictions in this field so that best practice models and provisions are followed. We need to carry out frequent legislative gap analysis exercises so that we realize, as I said, it's ever evolving. We might find that from 2018 to 2022, our law is now completely archaic. We need to already think of, you know, all the new crimes that have already come up. So we need to take advantage of the expertise. And we haven't, as Botswana, acceded to the Budapest Convention yet. However, it is my hope that at least we would consider it as a country so that we would be able to take advantage of any capacity building and training and, the access to these important mechanisms. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the speakers. Now, we come to a crossroads because we started a bit late. Peter, I have a question for you. It is now your turn to summarize. If you want a moment to collect your thoughts, we could perhaps take one question. Otherwise, you could plunge right in. What's your preference?
Betty, I'm perfectly happy to proceed. I just from my own attendance of the other sessions, I think we've typically allowed people to come in and ask some questions and allow for an exchange first. That kind of helps me a little bit also in terms of my task as rapporteur as well, but I'm at your disposal.
Okay, thank you. So let's give Peter a moment to talk to himself. And are there questions or comments? Please, over there.
Good morning to you all, and I take this opportunity to thank the Council of Europe for organizing this wonderful event and the government of Costa Rica for receiving us in such a nice way. And with all my respect to the colleague from Ukraine, and my hope that the peace come very soon to your country, I apologize because we were talking about the circumstances of cybercrime in countries that are more or less in peace. So I apologize for that to you. But I believe there is one thing that we can all see. Last year and this year were years of big migrations from Africa to Europe, from Ukraine to the world, from South America to Central and North America. And whenever a little girl, a young woman, is separated from the parents and has a cell phone in the hand, is vulnerable. It's a young girl, a young woman that can be catched by the dark side mentioned by here in this hall. And we all, as a society and parliamentarians, as policymakers, we have to take care of these young girls in their way through the country where they belong or in the way to the country that will receive them. So that is a thing that I would like to share with you. If you agree with me, we are all responsible for the safety and the welfare of these young girls, whatever their nationality is. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this comment and for your support for Ukraine. I totally agree with you. And when the war came, as I was talking yesterday, many Ukrainian women and girls, mothers with their kids, daughters, went abroad sometimes without just nothing, just with a purse, smartphone, what they just had time to get. And really, we're very thankful to all the countries, to all the people who really helped us and are helping to these girls and women, because in this situation, they are really very vulnerable, and that's true. And thank you for helping us to protect them.
Please, in the front.
Thanks for giving me floor. I am Milena Manukyan from Armenian delegation. The representative from Ukraine wanted to hear examples from other countries referring to criminal code options of effective punishment and sanctions on cybercrime committed against women. So in Armenian criminal code, we have a special chapter of articles of cybercrime. These articles are also written in a gender-neutral way. But in every article of cybercrime, there is mentioned a special aggravating circumstance, which is called if that crime has resulted severe consequences. Such severe consequences can be viewed causing mental issues, resulting in family breakup, or causing. So this is one of solutions in Armenian practice. If the cyber are the severe consequences, the punishment would be more severe.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this information.
And in the middle, in the back. Okay, one, two, okay. I hope that we can take the next two also, and they would be the last, but please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yesterday, Alexander asked a very important question. You know, we keep saying, let's include these issues in our cybercrime laws, and he asked, how will this be worded? We have to think about this. Now, first of all, there is the issue of cyber-dependent and cyber-enabled crimes. When we say let's include this in cybercrime laws, how possible would it be? But the good thing is that none of these issues are suffered by women alone. Men are stalked as well. And I think that when we begin to think about the value in terms of women, there are other ways we can prosecute these issues. We don't always have to wait for the cybercrime laws. For example, you have Obscenity Act, you have Public Indecency Act in many jurisdictions. The legislators in the national jurisdictions can make laws such as cyberbullying. In fact, bullying is not considered a crime. So we can't even have it in a cybercrime act. It may be difficult. So we can begin to make acts like Act Against Cyber Violence, an act against this, or we find a way to put them together and have several national acts that may still punish this, because we can't keep waiting until the Cybercrime Act considers gender issues, and then there's the problem of what is dependent and what is enabled by cyber. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I mean, I often think that it's important not to forget that physical world crimes in the criminal code still exist when you are trying to pursue a case that sounds in cyber. Extortion, for example, still exists in most countries, and it doesn't have to be labeled sextortion in order for you to be able to use it. Okay, please.
Thank you very much. I think basically it looks like, and coming from an African perspective, most African countries are appreciating the need to have laws on cybercrime. What is important is for us to also look at putting in place an infrastructure, more like a secretariat or an authority that administers issues of cybercrime. For instance, in Ghana, we have an authority that handles issues of cybersecurity and all of that. But what we need to do as policymakers or as legislators is to pay a little more attention to these units in terms of funding, because virtually everybody talks about funding and calling on people to come in and support Africa. We need to fund and all of that. But I think that we need to begin to create the necessary awareness, especially with African leaders, for them to prioritize issues of cybersecurity so that they are able to find some money and do away with investing in areas where it is not necessary and pushing a bit of funds into, because the danger, for instance, in my country is that people, especially high school students, today are very vulnerable. But how do we reach out to them? If countries are not really, really interested in funding these authorities, then we'll be meeting in conferences and we'll be talking, and there will not be any headway. So I think that as part of our discussions, the focus should also be on how we are able to get African leaders to prioritize issues of cybersecurity and also to pump a bit of money in there. And I think it's really going to help us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, my brother from Ghana. My brother from Ghana, to be honest, you're very correct. Infrastructure is key in addressing issues of cybercrime. And as a developing country, we are brothers and sisters, we are neighboring. You know, it's very difficult, and we are prone more to what my sister say, cyberbullying. Yes, sometimes you will say it's not a crime, but it is a crime. If you bully me, it's a crime. If I bully my brother here, it's a crime. So what we are doing in our country, Sierra Leone, to be honest, we've reviewed the Sexual Offences Act. We have what we call Sexual Offences Act of 2019 as amended. And into the amendment version, what we did was to put more critical penalties for offenders, especially offenders of pornography, child bullying, all of those child stalking. We look into it and put criminality into all of those issues. And what we did as a parliament was to put a compendium of saying cyber crime, sexual offenses that are related to cyber crimes, you go for life imprisonment. Oh yes, that's what we did in Sierra Leone. The amended version of 2019 sexual offenses, that's what we did as a parliament. It was not really easy, but it is too much, especially with pornography, child pornography. It's a very big problem because Sierra Leone is a developing country. Poverty, it's high. So, like what my sister from, I don't know the country said, the issue of handling phone for juveniles and for children is another issue that we need to be looked at. It is their right. But we need to look into all of those issues for the benefit of our countries and for the benefit of the world. Because if we don't address them, I'm afraid.
I just want to make the point that even as we formulate and develop new legislation to combat gender-based violence, we must always bear in mind that we cannot legislate a culture. So we cannot work in silos. We have to work with other agencies, be it the school, the church, other groups, work hand in hand if we are ready to make a serious dent going forward. Yes, we can have the laws on the books, but if the culture remains that does not value women, does not value girls, we are still going to continue to have the problem. We have to work in tandem with others. We cannot work in silos. We cannot take that individual territorial approach, or we will get nowhere quickly. Thank you. That's my contribution.
Thank you. I think we can take one last question, and then we will turn to Peter.
Gunail Husseinova, the senior investigator of the State Security Service of the Azerbaijan Republic. First of all, I would like to welcome all the participants and panel members. As mentioned earlier, cybercrime is a type of crime where there can be one criminal and thousands of victims, and these victims can be citizens of many foreign countries of the world. According to the current practice, during the procedure carried out in foreign countries on criminal cases, it's envisaged to apply to the relevant country in order to receive a legal aid, and almost all accepted conventions support this. And I would like to know if there is any practice in your countries that led you to create investigative terms, including investigators of these foreign countries which the victims or criminals belong. If it exists, in what order is provided in the legislation? Thank you.
Muchas gracias por la pregunta. Digamos, en este momento, por ejemplo, en Colombia, hace poco, recientemente, el 13 de julio de este año, se realizó la captura de un ciudadano colombiano que, en cooperación con Europol, Interpol y la Agregaduría de España, en Bogotá, se logró la captura de esta persona que desde una ciudad en Bogotá estaba, digamos, solicitando imágenes a niños, pornografía infantil, que estaban ubicados en Madrid. Ya hasta el momento, en el procedimiento nacional, se está haciendo toda la judicialización del caso, o sea, recabando todas las pruebas para que el juez pueda dictaminar una condena. Pero al ser niños menores de 14 años, las penas aún son más fuertes. Esto, digamos, como a grandes rasgos en Colombia, digamos, de un caso reciente que tenemos.
Thank you very much. And Peter, now for the summary.
Well, thank you very much, Betty, and indeed, thank you to all our distinguished panelists for what I'm sure we all agree with some very interesting and indeed comprehensive analysis of the subject matter of our workshop this morning. My name's Peter Barcroft. I know I've had the pleasure of meeting some of you. I work for an organization called Parliamentarians for Global Action. We are based in New York. We have an office in The Hague, often, as was noted earlier, frequently referred to as PGA, sometimes confusingly in the United States because PGA means the Professional Golfers Association. So occasionally I have to fend off questions which are wholly irrelevant to my job, but interesting nonetheless. As I said, we're based in New York. I'm an Irish national myself. I am acutely aware that Ireland is one of, if not the only country remaining in the Council of Europe that has not yet become a state party to the Budapest Convention. So I feel that there's a responsibility on my part, whether it's professional or personal, to also look into that as well at some stage, and work with legislators in my own national country as well to see what we can do to progress that. I have been asked to identify 3 takeaways, if you will, from the presentations that we've heard this morning, and I think what I'd like to do is share with you what I feel have been the recurring themes, if you will. And I think it's important to point out that some of what we've heard this morning has really not just it's not really duplicated, but it has reinforced, I think, a number of the points that have been made both by panelists and by those who've intervened from the floor over the past day as well. And so I think that's something that is not without significance as well. I know for those who are going to go back and compile and collate all these presentations and reports, I think that will be an interesting study as well, to see how these different conclusions and observations between these different panels as well, not just within the panel. But in any case, I have identified what I think are 3 key takeaways from this morning's session. This panel and our discussion this morning in this particular session has focused on the experiences and opportunities that are available, that are open to legislators and policymakers in this area. I think the one thing that I have been hearing, I think, quite loud and clear as well, is that yes, there are many, many opportunities. Some of those opportunities are being exploited, but with those opportunities come challenges, and I don't think we can escape from that. Those challenges are there. The first takeaway I would venture to suggest is that we need to be mindful of those challenges. We need to act on those challenges. I'm going to take a look at a few of them here now, because really it's going to be hard to advance, I think, in many respects, unless there is a cold, hard look that's taken at those challenges. That's the bad news, that there are those challenges are still there. We have to address them. I think, and this is my second takeaway from our session today, is that yes, those challenges are there, but I don't think they're insurmountable. I think some of those challenges, of course, some of them require significant investment of resources. The Council of Europe is doing phenomenal work in both, not only in terms of resources, but technical expertise worldwide, and so is and has been for some time addressing those challenges head on. So what I would say, my second takeaway from the session today is, yes, those challenges are there, but they are not insurmountable, and we can look a little bit at what can be done to tackle those challenges. What are the solutions? Closely related to that, and the third takeaway, if you will, is as we identify those solutions, some easier than other perhaps, of course those solutions must in every conceivable way at all times be gender driven. Most, if not all, of the panelists today have highlighted this issue of lack of awareness, frankly, an indifference, a significant indifference in a number of their countries when it comes to dealing with this more nuanced approach and how essential it is to tackle these things through a gender prism, a gender lens, if you will. Let's look at some of the challenges that were addressed. Again, I don't think any of these are particularly novel, but I do think we have to highlight them again. I think this is a summary part of that. One of the points that was made was lack of expertise in cybercrime detection. Another one was lack of requisite technology to handle cybercrime. I think when it comes to technology and so on, that's sort of the hardware side of things. In my mind, that's where governments can come in and do help. Whether it's the UK, whether it's Germany, France, a lot of governments now, particularly over the last few years, have ramped up their support to those countries who most need that technological support. Expertise, there's the Council of Europe, there's the OAS, there's many, many different organizations that are involved not only in providing this expertise, but also expertise at no expense. And it's sometimes we find within our organization that the challenge is sometimes not the lack of availability of expertise, but strangely enough, the lack of awareness that that expertise is out there and that it's not being fully exploited. So that's something that, again, to speak to some of the points made by the participants, there still is a perennial, I would even say an insidious problem with the fact that the involvement of women in these decision-making processes to this day remains very limited. And that's something that has to change. Within our own organization, you've heard from Honourable Catherine Tarawali, we have, we're doing our level best to engage with more women legislators. I will tell you this, I'm glad to tell you this, I'm proud to tell you this, that many of our members not only are women legislators, but they are amongst our most effective members. Some of them, it is not an exaggeration to say, without whom several international treaties would not have been ratified in the last 3 to 4 years. So we're very mindful of that, and we're looking, it's constantly to the forefront of our minds as we look to address that particular challenge. I think the delegate from Botswana mentioned this issue of lack of resources. That's a huge challenge as well. Lack of understanding. Now, this I think goes to this point I made earlier on about education. I've heard this I've been sitting in quietly, I must say, but I've been absorbing as much as I can in so many of these working panel sessions. This whole recurring theme of the need for education at all levels is absolutely decisive, and so that's a challenge that is there and needs to be addressed. So those are some of the challenges. Obviously, not a comprehensive list. What are the solutions? 3, if not 4, of the panelists, if I counted correctly, all referred to the need for a multi-stakeholder approach. I think that's what we're doing here in meetings of this kind. We have legislators, government officials, civil society people like myself, and that's essential in terms of driving forward, taking that holistic approach, and really taking a holistic approach. Our organization works promoting treaties in other spheres as well, and really, whether we like it or not, difficult as it is, the holistic approach is really the only way forward. I know I'm running out of time, but one of the other issues that was addressed was legislation. The fact that for so many of you there are gaping wide gaps in your legislation insofar as cyber legislation, the need to make sure that they are more gender sensitive and so on. I think steps are being taken on that. There's still some way to go. And really that brings me into, and I'll conclude with this third takeaway, which is that all of these challenges that are there and the solutions that are being, that we know exist and need to be pursued, can and should be done through a gender lens. One of the things I think that really hit home to me as well in these presentations was the need to not only to engage more legislators, but also people who are directly impacted. Often these decisions are made by individuals who may be eminently well qualified, but the people who are most impacted are not part of that process. That's a chronic problem and needs to be addressed. I'm going to leave it there. Obviously, willing to take any points. For those of you who may have an interest, I know we have other members of Parliament with us in learning more about PGA and our work in the cyberspace. Feel free to talk to me, but much better still, talk to our 2 members who are with us here at the table. I'm honored to share the podium with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you to everyone. Thank you particularly to the panelists. I have the sense that there are a lot more questions and comments in the atmosphere of the room, so with luck, you will have the chance to talk to the panelists after the end of this session. Thanks very much, and thanks for the extra time.
Let's start with the next round of workshops in 10 minutes, okay? The longer coffee break will come later. So in 10 minutes, please in your respective workshop.
Good morning and welcome to the audience and our speakers to the Practitioner Workshop 3, Experiences and Opportunities from the Law Enforcement Perspective. I am Ecuadorian police officer, retired district general, representing the International Association Women Police and acting coordinator of South and Central America. I'm pleased to introduce our speakers. Skippy Salihu is digital forensic expert in forensic directory at Kosovo Police for 8 years. Prior to her current position, Ms. Salihu achieved experience in the private sector as IT expert until 2011 when she started working in sector against for cybercrime, and after 3 years she moved on in digital forensic unit where still she continued working there. Magda Priscila Trindade Segui, Department of Computer Crimes, under General Directorate for the Fight Against Organized Crime and Interpol Principal Officer, Ministry of Interior, Uruguay. Leader in cybercrime-related topics in both national and international location, expert in forensic analyst, leading analyst in Uruguay regarding online child sexual exploitation. Jessica Nelson, Australian Federal Police, leading senior constable. Jessica Nelson is the senior investigator within cybercrime operations. Jessica has over 12 years in the AFP, specializing in covert online operation, investigating cybercrime, drugs, and organized crime, counterterrorism, and child protection operation, as well as delivering specialist training to both domestic and international law enforcement. Jessica Nakunda, Director of Cyber Fraud Unit, Rwanda Investigation Bureau. She started her career 15 years ago when she was working as a digital forensic specialist in Rwanda National Police. She has 11 years on experience in cybercrime investigation. She is currently among the Rwanda government delegates for ADHOC committee to elaborate a comprehensive international convention on countering to use of information and communication technologies of criminal purposes. Irene Sena, Police Lieutenant Colonel and Acting Chief Women and Children Cybercrime Protection Unit, Anti-Cybercrime Group, Philippine National Police. And Reporter Dong Yu Kim is a specialized officer at Interpol and has managed the implementation of the GLASSY Plus project for law enforcement globally. Project Council of Europe Cybercrime Program. And now we are going to start with our speaker, Skippy Salihu. Go ahead.
Hello. Hello to everyone. I have presentation. So thank you, Yvonne, for presenting me. I feel very honored to be here with all of you, and I'm very thankful of Council of Europe for this opportunity. So yes, I'm Skippy Salihu, and I come from Kosovo. I'm from Kosovo. Kosovo is a small country in Europe, and I came here to speak as the first female in digital forensic in Kosovo Police. Today, I'm going to speak for two topics. what is needed to further promote the role of women to cybercrime or in digital examiner. More women to cybercrime will provide more ideas and perspectives and also can contribute a lot on solving cases in cybercrime. Okay. The fact that I'm here and we are all here together tells us a lot that how can we contribute in cyber world and in law enforcement. When I started working in digital forensic, I didn't know too much about forensic, and I fell there by happiness, not by any plan. The challenge of learning something completely new that is very complex, but also very useful, drove me into digital forensic. I like how this field teaches us that even the smallest things have matter. Sometimes just an artifact or a thumbnail image can break or make the case. The challenge of learning something completely new, I like how this field teaches us for many little things. Digital forensic is all about looking for clues, from small to big, and identifying patterns. So each investigation is different. That means that in each investigation you will face with new evidences, and you will learn and you will keep being updated every day. Working in law enforcement, it wasn't easy for me because I started working in law enforcement when I was just 25 years, and I didn't have any background before for law enforcement. I had IT background, but not law enforcement background. So it was very hard for me to be respected as a professional, and it took me a couple of years to settle in everything and to be respected. But I'm very thankful for people that I had around that helped me and support me to go through all obstacles. We are just two people in Kosovo Police, so that we work in digital forensic. Me as female, and I have a male colleague. We work together, but we work in separated cases. So yes, I used to work in many difficult and important cases in cybercrime that were with importance of state. So, digital forensic for men, I'm definitely not, because it's, I think, and I believe that it's more, in the future, it will be more like a myth than a reality. So the second topic that I'm talking about, what is needed to make the investigation of cybercrimes against women more effective. Women are becoming soft targets as they often trust other people and are unaware of consequences. But how can be safe on internet? I think we can contribute on giving information, education, and knowledge. For example, some measures of online safety are avoiding responding mail messages, avoiding click suspicious links, and to not trust people on social media. Because I examined so many phones and many computers that were related with cases with photos and videos that were misused, and in most all of those cases, women were victims. I wanted to mention a case because it was very interesting, and I was very surprised with this case. It was last year. It was related with a woman. She was under arrest, and she didn't want to give the passcode to prosecutor or to investigator, but just me as digital forensic examiner. And she had some sensitive photos and videos in her phone, and she didn't want to show other people's. So I finished the case. I give the prosecutor a report just with data that he needs for the case, but not all the data. as they asked in most of the cases. So, as Selena yesterday said, that sometimes women want to cooperate with women. So this case, it was very interesting for me, and I was happy to help her in this situation. So I think in this presentation, I have considered 2 points that for me were very important. Women should be more prepared on how to prevent the cybercrime with education, with knowledge, with information, and if it happens, cybercrime, to know her rights. Because it's very important after the case it's happened to know how to deal with that case. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Skippy. As you said, when a woman is exposed in her privacy with intimate images, she prefers that another woman do the investigation. One of the important reasons to increase the participation of women in cybercrime. Our next speakers, Magda Priscilla Trindade Segui. Please, go ahead.
Muy buenos días a todos. Para mí es un enorme placer estar participando de tan prestigioso evento con mis colegas acá en este panel hermoso y mi colega también. Bueno, para introducirnos en la temática, empezamos a hablar en lo que es la promoción del papel de las mujeres en la prevención y la investigación, ¿no? Que eso está tomando una fuerte tendencia a diario. O sea, eso se desarrolla a diario con la fuerza de que todas nosotras hemos estado involucrando y colocando en nuestro trabajo, ¿no? En primera instancia, los desafíos que se enfrentan los organismos encargados de hacer cumplir la ley y registrar los delitos cibernéticos contra las mujeres. Los delitos asociados a la ciberdelincuencia contra las mujeres es un desafío constante, tanto para los legisladores, los fiscales, jueces, los investigadores, que deben ir adaptándose y ofreciendo respuestas rápidas y eficaces para dilucidar esos hechos, ¿no? Las mujeres en gran parte son más vulnerables para ser víctimas de delitos de género, tanto que el ciberespacio facilita estos delitos, tanto como la divulgación de imágenes de contenido íntimo, el sexting, la sextortion, que son creo que los delitos que más se acentúan, y ni que hablar de los delitos que involucran a los menores de edad. Hoy en día podemos detectar que en muchos casos las víctimas presentan temor en el momento de realizar la denuncia, ya sea por miedo a exponer su intimidad, a temor a ser juzgada por su entorno. Es un desafío constante el intento de no revictimizar a esa víctima, ¿no? Ya que en ocasiones es inducida a contar su experiencia una y otra vez en forma del relato y volver a vivir todo el mal que en un momento fue ocasionado. Teníamos el PPT ahí para hacer la presentación. Muy bien. Here. Thank you. Bien. ¿En cuánto están contribuyendo las mujeres en la investigación efectiva en los casos de ciberdelincuencia? La presencia femenina en el ámbito de investigación relacionado con la ciberdelincuencia aporta un gran factor positivo en cuanto a cualidades que presentamos nosotras, ¿no? Ya sea el compromiso, la perceptibilidad, la empatía que colocan en cada una de sus investigaciones. El aumento de la participación femenina en las investigaciones es clave para abordar los principales desafíos globales, sobre todo porque contribuye a una mejor comprensión del impacto de los delitos en varias comunidades y porque ayuda a desarrollar una respuesta más eficaz y sostenible. Hoy en día se ha notado un incremento de la presencia femenina en cargos donde debe comandar grupos, pero aún así no ha sido suficiente para neutralizar la tendencia a la masculinización en la comunidad. Debemos impulsar a las mujeres que se involucren más en este ámbito, no solo para evitar que se conviertan en víctimas, sino para explorar un campo que cuenta con una deficiencia muy amplia en presencia femenina y lograr que se fortalezca eso cada día. ya sea alentar, apoyar, promover la educación y brindar oportunidades en las escuelas para que las niñas se involucren y se desencadenen su interés por la temática y se vuelvan mujeres empoderadas. Incluir el enfoque de género en la lucha contra el crimen organizado en materia de cibercrimen, la protección a las víctimas y el liderazgo de la mujer en la lucha contra el crimen. En cuanto a qué se necesita para la investigación de los delitos cibernéticos contra las mujeres y que sea más efectiva, la suma de mayor fuerza efectiva femenina en las investigaciones, es decir, impulsar el interés de la mujer en el ámbito de investigación cibernética, ya que cuenta con un plus de empatía, de sensibilidad en cuanto a las víctimas, cuando las víctimas son mujeres. Prestar una atención integral a las víctimas, ofrecer con ello atención psicológica también, que parta ya desde nosotros, de los investigadores, que somos el primer contacto con esas víctimas, ya brindar y detectar factores puntuales, ¿no? A mí me pasó una vez, que le cuento como experiencia, en un allanamiento donde se encontraba una menor de edad. Todo se inició con una presunta producción de material de abuso sexual infantil que teníamos que investigar. Hicimos un allanamiento en el interior del Uruguay, eran la casa de una niña, donde la pudimos detectar que era ella misma que estaba produciendo videos y cargándolos a la nube. En ese momento llegamos, incursionamos el domicilio y ya yo la pude detectar, que ella tenía como que se cohibió con nuestra presencia y obviamente que se intimidó. Entonces en un momento ella optó por un relato espontáneo, porque vio mi presencia, porque como que me vio a lo lejos y respiró, y ya le detecté esa empatía que también yo pude percibir, ¿no? Entonces ese fue un caso que la presencia femenina en ese momento jugó un factor muy importante para nosotros y apoyó muchísimo en la investigación. Y esa es la idea, unir fuerzas, interrelacionarnos y cada día más impulsionar a las mujeres para que puedan seguir este ámbito que es apasionante, ¿no? El ámbito del combate a la ciberdelincuencia es apasionante. Y entonces los impulso a todos para que puedan también dejar la semillita en cada lugar de trabajo y que tengamos cada día más mujeres empoderadas y luchando para que esto se desarrolle bien. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Magda. How important is commitment, perseverability, and empathy for an effective investigation? We will continue with Jessica Nelson. Please go ahead.
Wow. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jessica Nielsen, and I'm an investigator of cybercrime operations for the Australian Federal Police. I just want to say it is an absolute honour to be here. I'm very humbled to be in the presence of so many extraordinary women. I felt quite emotional over the last couple of days at the passion, the power and conviction a lot of the ladies who have spoken have portrayed. I want to extend a really big thank you to the Council of Europe for inviting Australians to this incredible conference. So before I start, I wanted to actually reach out to the audience and please raise your hands if you've ever had anything to do with the Australian Federal Police in your duties, whether through law enforcement or as a prosecutor or otherwise. Okay, so a few people, that's great. I just wanted to give a little bit of background and context about the AFP and cybercrime and how we operate. So the Australian Federal Police have a very clear distinction between cybercrime and technology-enabled crimes. So technology-enabled crimes, and we've used the term cyber-enabled crimes throughout the conference, are where the use of the internet or information communication technology are integral to the offending. So we're talking about child exploitation offences, cyberbullying and many frauds. The AFP's remit when it comes to cybercrime investigations are what we describe as serious computer offences under our criminal code. These are your unauthorised accesses, unauthorised modifications and unauthorised impairments. So your ransomware attacks, remote access Trojans, rats, etc. If I'm talking too fast, please just tell me to slow down. All good? Okay. The Australian Government recognised the importance of investing in Australian law enforcement cybercrime investigations and capability uplift, and as such, a significant amount of funding was provided to the AFP, and at the start of the year, the AFP established its very own standalone cyber command. So previously, cybercrime has always been attached to another function of the AFP. So before we became Cyber Command, we were organised crime and cyber, and prior to that, we were high-tech crime operations, which also sat child protection operations and COVID online operations. So to be our standalone command now is quite a significant achievement, not only for law enforcement, but for the Australian Government to really recognise the necessary or the need to invest in that. So now this is where it gets good, okay? The AFP Cyber Command is led by Assistant Commissioner Justine Goff, who is an exceptional female leader within our organisation, and she's also the AFP's champion for the National Women's Advisory Network. Under her command and understanding the need, 2 additional cybercrime investigations teams were created. So we now have teams in Sydney, Canberra headquarters, which is where I operate from, Melbourne, Brisbane and Perth as well. Also under her command, the Joint Policing Cybercrime Coordination Centre was established in our Sydney office. So this is comprised of 2 operations teams, 2 target development teams, and we also have representatives from state law enforcement, our big 5 banks, as well as our international law enforcement partners. This allows us to respond adequately and quite swiftly to any major incidents that occur in Australia, so we can facilitate our inquiries and get things moving quite rapidly. Also under her command, and I did say that she's an incredible female leader and a really lovely person too. Also under her command, Ransomware as a Service and Rat Target Development Task Force were established. So just for some context as well, in regards to how our teams are structured, we're what we describe as a multidisciplinary team. So our team is comprised of investigators, intel analysts, and most importantly, our technical specialists. So our technical specialists are what I like to describe as our translators. So they translate the ones and zeros for the very non-technical investigators to help us understand what we're looking at, what we're investigating, and how to drive forward the investigation. Very often I ask my techs to please draw me a picture because I just don't understand what you're saying, and they do that, and they're wonderful for it. So within AFP headquarters in Canberra, we have a huge leadership team of females. So our investigations team is led by Detective Inspector Steph Leonard. Our COVID online operations team is led by Detective Sergeant Chrissy Walters. The Rat Target Development team is led by Detective Sergeant Grace Karma. And within my team, we have a number of women within the investigation side as well as the intelligence support side. And unfortunately, right now, we don't have any women in our technical specialist cohort, but we are working on that. So without going into too much detail, and I'm very mindful of the flashing clock right in front of me, but as it is a new, active and very high-profile investigation, my team only in the last few weeks have responded to a significant ransomware incident in Australia. I was appointed as the investigations case officer, and Detective Inspector Steph Leonard was appointed as our senior investigations officer. So we, as a serious girl power team, have led the response to the investigation. We've liaised with a number of internal and external stakeholders, developed our investigation strategies, and have directed to about 30 people who are involved in the job so far, investigational priorities to manage resources. So to sort of wrap up, because that clock is flashing, one of the things that I'm really proud of being a woman and a police officer is the impact that women are having not only within cybercrime, but across all crime types. And being able to work effectively and harmoniously with our male counterparts is really key to our success. We have a lot of support from our male counterparts in the AFP, and I'm really proud of that because we can't do this all by ourselves. We probably could, but we probably shouldn't as well. We need to work with the guys as well, and it takes a team to achieve great results. So thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Good technical investigators and their resources are very important to the investigation, especially in cybercrime. We will continue with Jessica Nekunda. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Ivan. Thank you, the organizers. I'm so privileged to be here, and it's going to be hard for me to have something to say after what powerful women and men that have been here before me. But I'll try to also express myself and explain what we go through as investigators, as women, and when we were preparing, they gave us some questions to think about. They gave us 4, but for me, I'll be talking about only 3, since my colleagues have tackled on others. Oh, I hope I will know how to use it. Yeah. My first question is, what challenges do law enforcement agencies face when recording and investigating cybercrimes against women? Back home, we have a challenge of culture. As you can see, I'm from Rwanda, and we have a strong culture where women, when things goes with intimacy, we don't like to talk about it, like in public. And coming forward to report the case when you are harassed or when you are blackmailed, it's always a problem. And this makes it hard for us to even have the statistics, how many cases we have registered, because some cases are in there. No one is reporting that. There is lack of awareness where women think, oh, they don't know if there is laws that can protect them, and lack of training of cybercrime investigators. We all know that cybercrime investigation costs are expensive. Maybe in Africa, I don't know about Europe or where, but cybercrime investigation costs are very expensive. So having people that can afford and join the investigation of cybercrime is always a challenge. We also don't have so many people that are women in cybercrime investigations. The thing is, when when a crime is committed and you are talking to your fellow woman, you know, like, she understands you better than anyone. If I say something happened to me, you just put it on yourself. You'll be like, if it's me. So, like, you investigate that with passionate, like, you feel like you want to help your fellow woman. There is also, we have a problem of fake identification. When a crime is committed online, if someone is bullying you, this person might be, say, I'm Jessica, yet the person is Robert. What do you, like, I'm going to be looking for Jessica instead of Robert. So the fake identification that is used is always a challenge. And yesterday, a fellow person who was presenting said something about Facebook, how they help them, but I'm sorry, I'm going to say Facebook does not help me. Normally Facebook will say they will only act when it's a threatening, life-threatening problem. And I don't know how they tell that this is a life-threatening or not, because no one will go on Facebook. Maybe if suicide cases are going to be 10, one of them will be, hey, look, I'm going to kill myself. Then we will know that this person is going to commit suicide. But there is someone who is going to be harassed and blackmailed, and this person is going to commit suicide without announcing it on Facebook. So it is going to be hard to help this person because Facebook wants me to come with a life-threatening case. Again, when we are investigating Gmail mails, we normally get stuck when we get the IP address of the Gmail. You will never know who sent what. So of recent, I wrote to Gmail. I had a case, and when I wrote in March, just 5 days back, that's when I got an email from Gmail, and the team was like, "Oh, sorry, we are not the ones that can help you. Maybe you can go through the Gmail tips." And I wrote in March. So this is a challenge for me and for us in general. I don't know about others, but this is a challenge. Number 2, how are women contributing to the effective investigation of cybercrime cases? Increase the number of trained female investigators in cybercrimes, hence make this easier. I talked about this because when you're talking to your fellow woman, it's always easy. It is always comforting. We have where we do campaigns targeting women how to be safe online. We let know our fellow sisters, our moms, if we cannot walk on the road or on the street naked, let us not walk naked on the internet. Since internet, you don't know who is watching. But when you pass by the road naked, maybe your fellow woman can say, hey, can you have my jacket? So we let them know, and we have, of recent, we have been doing a campaign targeting schools, and we have been doing this with our National Cybersecurity Authority, and it has been going on, and it is still going on. We have been going to all districts and most of the schools to educate our students about how to be safe online. After seeing that it's hard to report the cases, Rwanda Investigation Bureau, where I work from, decided to put a platform where you can report a case anonymously. If you don't want to come forward, but you can at least go in and type what you have been experiencing. So that helped. I worked on the case where like 15 women were asked to pay money when they shared their photos, and the suspect was one. He was targeting different people. Some people paid, and others did not. And those who paid, they were actually the ones that kept giving money. So what we tell people, we say, don't give any ransom when they are like ask you, because when you pay, there is no insurance that you're not going to pay again. So we make them know that paying is not a solution. Okay. Number 3, what I was going to talk about, as I said, what is needed to make the investigation of cybercrimes against women more effective? My country, in 2018, made a law that is cybercrime law, but cybercrime law, brothers of ours yesterday said it only stops at the border. Yeah, it's true, it stops at the border, but at least let's have it. In the country, let us try to investigate. When it goes outside the border, let us work with Interpol, because we cannot catch these people without the use of Interpol. There is also strengthened measures encouraging women to report cases of cybercrime committed against them. We let them know that there is laws and there is, they can report. One of our colleagues asked what countries are doing if the cases of cybercrime have happened. Back home, we have a press, where we have Isange One-Stop Center. Isange One-Stop Center, it's like a center where people that are violated or harassed, they go for free treatment and counseling. So we saw that it's important also to include cybercrime harassed victims to go to Isange and talk to someone. They get free treatment, they get free lawyers, they get free, everything is free for them, because some they cannot afford, some they have paid their money and it's finished. So they need someone to talk to. So this Isange helps a lot. I think I've run out of time, but I wanted to, before I finish, I wanted to say something. Cybercrimes cases, they are not investigated at all, if I may say. Before we think of women being victims or how we can increase cybercrime investigators that are women, we should also see in a big picture what can we do to investigate cybercrimes, because most of the times when these cases are not handled, the trust of the population will go. Like, they will not come to police because they think nothing is going to happen. So we need at least to find a way we can investigate these cases, punish them, let the perpetrators know that there is a way they can be punished. They should not be thinking that they are not going to be punished if they do something. Again, about the laws, I wanted to say we should have, maybe, I don't know if we can have one, but at least it can be put in place so that when the crimes are committed, there is no safe haven for the perpetrators. At least what is a crime in my country should be a crime in your country also, so that we can work together. I thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Of course, the lack of information and training about the law and rights that protect women make them more vulnerable. And our last speaker, Irene Sena, please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much to the Council of Europe for inviting me in this prestigious event. And I'm very honored to represent our organization. Speaking on my experience as a part of the Philippine National Police since 2014, there are some issues of concern when recording and investigating cybercrimes against women. Oftentimes, victims are hesitant to file cases because the offenders are their former partners. They are ashamed to narrate their stories, for it involves their sexual photos and videos, whom they believe are only shared to their respective partners. And in the process of investigation, they somehow feel being re-traumatized as they need to recall their bad experiences. Victims often request only for the crawling of their illicit photos and videos online, not for the purpose of filing cases against the offenders, but only to request for the takedown of their materials. For the cases that we have handled, which involves minor victims, the saddest reality is that the perpetrators are their own parents or guardians. During the surge of the COVID-19 pandemic in our country, many people lost their jobs and stay at home without nothing to be busy of but to surf the internet. This became an opportunity for the guardians to exploit the children. thinking that it will do no physical harm to the children without taking into consideration the long and lasting psychological effect it may bring. Another issue is the cross-border jurisdiction. Since cybercrime is considered borderless, it is very crucial on the part of the investigators to obtain pieces of evidence relative to the case. If the data needed for the prosecution of the case belongs to a server hosted in another country, we have to go through the tedious process of requesting from the hosting country the needed information through the mutual legal assistance, which takes a lot of time to obtain the information. Based on our meeting with the Philippine Internet Crimes Against Children Center, in some countries, even complaints from anonymous complainants are being entertained. However, in the Philippines, it is so hard to prosecute criminals without the participation of the private complainants. The court are even requiring the physical presence of the complainants, which is very hard to comply if the complainants reside in other countries. It will be very expensive on the part of the complainant, considering that they must personally appear before the court during court trials. Women plays a vital role in the investigation of cybercrimes. When the victims are women, they feel confident enough to narrate their stories to women investigators. Somehow, they feel the sense of empathy and the trust that their videos and photos which will be used as evidence to the case, will be kept confidential. Women investigators are very compassionate and gender sensitive, especially in cases involving illicit photos and videos circulating online. They themselves understand the feeling of being ridiculed or bullied online, hence, as much as possible, they avoid victim blaming. In our office, we have designated a special place for the investigation of women and children. We see to it that their records are always kept confidential and all complaints are recorded in a separate blotter book which is not open to the public. Only authorized personnel may view the records. To further promote the role of women as cybercrime investigators, they should be given more opportunities for self-improvement. They need to be capacitated not only in terms of investigation, but also for social media exploitation, conduct of link analysis, conduct of digital forensic examination, cryptocurrency investigation, deep web investigation, and other specialized trainings to constantly update their technical know-how in handling women cybercrime cases. They should always be given the opportunity to collaborate with local and foreign counterparts to have takeaways of good practices to further improve their conduct of investigation. And more importantly, they should be given equal opportunities with male investigators, because both have equal roles to perform and same level of duties and responsibilities to their respective clients. To make the investigation of cybercrimes against women more effective, investigators need to learn the conduct of digital forensic examinations and other tools and techniques in the conduct of investigation and intelligence gathering, so they themselves can take advantage of technology in finding valuable digital information contained in different electronic devices. In the Philippine settings, the government realized the importance of the role of women in the field of cybercrime investigation. Hence, they have opened opportunities of hiring additional female personnel in the uniformed service. They have even considered hiring of personnel from the different professions aside from criminology, but also in the field of social services, psychologists, and information technology graduates, which indeed level up the playing field of investigation, thereby achieving more technology-driven and forensically obtained evidence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Irene. I must highlight your words. Women plays a vital role in the investigation, so female victims feel more comfortable telling their stories to another women investigators. Now, discussion time. Answer and questions with the audience, please. Do we have the microphone?
Thank you very much for your interesting presentations, panel. I have a critical question. I've heard multiple times that it's better for female victims to talk to female officers. But I was wondering if that's something we know or if that is an assumption. And that's because of an experience I had myself when I was working in human trafficking. We did an interview with a victim, me and a male colleague. And during the interview, the woman asked if I could leave the room. So I think sometimes it's harder for women to tell their story to other women. So I was wondering, wouldn't it not be better to ask them their preferences instead of putting forward a woman?
Yeah.
And I have little experience, less than you do, so it's really a question, not an assumption.
That's true. Somebody?
My experience in policing, so I started in uniform on the road, dealing with a lot of victims of family violence matters, sexual assault, and our attitude was always that we would let the victim choose. So when we responded to an incident and we started engaging with the victim, sometimes they leant more toward my male colleague and he had already built some rapport or trust, or I did that. A lot of the time I did find myself the one engaging with the woman or the victim, and they were very comfortable with that, but we always made it an option for them, and we also sort of decided amongst ourselves, well, who's the most appropriate person here? Is she engaging better with my male colleague or with me or another female colleague?
For us in the Philippines, since my shop is responsible for taking charge on the investigation of women and children cases involving sexual-related offenses, we are mandated to assign female investigator to this case. It is for the reason to prevent the spreading of the videos and photos involved in the investigation. The law does not allow male investigators to handle sexual-related offenses involving women and children. Thank you.
Thank you. I think what we wanted to mean was, instead of staying there, we don't have women in the investigating team, at least let them be there. If the victim wants to talk to the lady will be available for her. And if she wants to talk to a male colleague, then still he's there. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I mentioned a case in the presentation. So we, in our unit, we are just 2 people, me as female and I have the colleague. So that woman that I mentioned before, she wanted to cooperate with me, and because she had some photos and videos, so she didn't want to see other people. So it's very good to have females and males every time, equal, if it can.
Complementando lo que dijeron mis compañeras, sí, en realidad cada caso es un caso, ¿no? Todos los casos son particulares, y yo también expuse un caso en donde la víctima como que sintió más confortable con mi presencia, pero hemos tenido casos también en donde se han aferrado a los colegas masculinos, y ya sea por el entorno, por la confianza que le brinda el policía, pero cada caso es particular y se le da a la víctima la posibilidad que elija también con quién, y si quiere hacerlo también, ¿no? Porque eso es un detalle no menor, que la potestad de hablar o no la tiene la víctima, y en esos casos tiene libre albedrío, si hacerlo o no, o con quién hacerlo. Muchas gracias.
Another question, please.
Un comentario más que una pregunta. he mandado un mensaje a nuestra diputada que se encuentra en Argentina, doña Carolina Delgado, la presidenta de la Comisión Interparlamentaria de la Mujer, que está muy a gusto de saber que esto se está realizando acá y está en un foro con 3.000 mujeres en estos momentos terminando. Y eso habla mucho del empoderamiento de la mujer. Me parece importantísimo seguir trabajando en el empoderamiento y ojalá que nuestros países de alguna forma puedan resolver el hecho de que medios de comunicación colectivos puedan enviar mensajes positivos sobre las posibilidades que tienen las mujeres de hacer las denuncias. Pero más que hacer las denuncias es lograr empoderarlas para llegar a un juicio claro y lograr una sentencia. Costa Rica pareciera perfecto, pero no lo es. Las últimas estadísticas tenemos de que en temas donde se involucra una mujer, y no estoy hablando sobre del ciberdelito, más allá, 33.000 últimas denuncias se han dado sobre violencia en diferentes campos. 1.500 llegan a juicio. Lamentablemente solo han habido 800 sentencias. Y esto nos dice mucho de lo que realmente tenemos que hacer. Me parece que hay temores, me parece que no hay un verdadero empoderamiento de la mujer que realmente quiera ir a un juicio, que quiera afrontar un proceso para lograr la sentencia. Es un comentario de lo que tenemos que hacer. Algo no está bien.
Thank you. Do you have a question?
I had a question for you, Jessica. Thank you for a very good presentation, because you spoke about an anonymous online reporting platform, and that's something that I would really like to see happening in the Netherlands, in my country, but sadly we haven't. So I was curious about two things. What kind of information do you get from those reports? And what, in your experience, do they lead to? Is it just a report, or is also a starting point of an investigation?
Thank you. It's a starting point of investigation, and we'll contact the person like in private. You don't need to call her to come to the station. You can even find her to where she stays, and then she will explain like everything. As I said before, we had a case where one person was asking money from different women, and they were almost 15. And everything happened like no one knew that you came to me, and another person did not know that we had that same case. So everything happened like in a secret, and then the perpetrator was prosecuted.
Please, another question here. Here, please.
Hello. I just have one question. My name is Tamara, and I'm a prosecutor from Jamaica. But first, let me just commend the panel for such a wonderful presentation. From a prosecutorial point of view, when we interview these witnesses, we never do it alone. The protocol is that you always have a colleague with you, whether it's a male or a female. My question is, when you are interviewing these victims, do you do it whether it be male or female alone, or do you have a team with you so as to prevent any allegations being made against you after this interview based on the interaction with these victims? That's one. And secondly, I just want to make a comment about empowering women to be a part of the cybercrime fight. And throughout the week, there's just listening to all the presentations and the comments, there is one thing that struck me, and that was when we speak about empowering, we need to also add to that toolkit an element of responsibility on the part of our women in order to help us to empower ourselves. Because when we look at the irreparable damages to your personal brand as a professional, when these images get out there, it doesn't matter if you take the accused persons to the criminal courts and he gets 10 or 7 years, and then you move over to the civil court and you sue for the emotional damages. That personal brand that you spend years building, I don't know if you are able to get it back. And so I just want us to add to our toolkit the element of responsible posting, as well as pushing women not to shame and blame other women, because I believe as women, we do that more than the men. We get into a space where we say, you should not have done that. How could you be so stupid? Yesterday in the session that I was in, a question was posed, is it a responsible thing to say to young girls, if you are sending out these images, crap out your face, for want of a better word, eliminate your face. And that is what I say to us women as well. If you're in, some persons are in relationships where perhaps they see it necessary to share these images, do you have to involve your face in it? Some form of protection in the empowerment tool for us as women. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question here, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this amazing presentation and that you share this experience from your countries. I would like to know, it's regarding the structures of police, and I mean, like, if you have cases regarding the cybercrime. So in your unit or division, it's specialized unit, or you have only, you can have several crimes, or it should be only cyber crimes, or it can be also computer facilitated and other crimes. You just use computer as a method to commit a crime. And also, if there are mix of another crimes, do you have a technical assistant? I want to answer from speakers who don't mention in their speech. So thank you. It will be helpful also because in Georgia, for example, it's good thing when it's in capital city because it's more centralized. But in regions, we have investigators who have a mix of these cases, and they cannot manage because you know that cybercrime is a completely different dimension. So thank you.
Irene, please.
Yes, to answer the question. In the Philippine National Police, we have a designated unit to handle cybercrime cases. It was mandated by law with the creation of Republic Act 10175 or the Cybercrime Prevention Act of 2012. It was mandated for the Philippine National Police to have a separate unit to handle cybercrime cases. With the creation of the unit, there are 6 operating units under it, and 3 of which are technical by nature and 3 are operational by nature. The cybercrime unit, the cybersecurity unit is in charge of all technical aspects. The digital forensic is responsible for the conduct of digital forensic examination of all cases being handled by the Philippine National Police, whether it be cybercrime related, cyber-enabled or not. All traditional cases involving digital evidence are being examined by the forensic unit of the anti-cybercrime group. And our unit is the Women and Children, specifically handling cases of illicit photos and videos involving women and children. We have a separate unit handling financial-related crimes, the Cyber Financial Crime Unit, and the General Cybercrime, the Cyber Response Unit. We have diversified units taking charge of all cybercrime cases nationwide. We have regional offices, provincial offices, and district offices to handle cases. Thank you.
Jessica?
Thank you. In Rwanda, we have a cyber crime division that is made of 3 directorates. We have Digital Forensic Directorate, we have Cyber Fraud Directorate, and we have Fusion Center, who directed, and those are the ones that keeps us updated, like what is happening in the cyber world, and they also have capacity building. So in digital forensic, we have the malware part, and we have the pure digital forensic investigation. And we also have other 2 officers that work with our GBV unit, where when it's a cyber harassment or cyber crime that has to do with GBV, then those are the ones to handle. But also, if they want evidence, they will also come back to the forensic unit. I thank you.
GP?
And in Kosovo Police, we have separated. Cybercrime is a unit, and digital forensic is another unit. Cybercrime deals just with investigation of cybercrimes, and digital forensic deals with all the cases. We do examination for all cases, murder, suicide, cybercrime, everything. But we do just on office, we do just on laboratory. And we don't go outside for in crime scene or something like that. They can do cybercrime. They go and get image in live scene as something like that. But we have separated.
Thank you, the audience, for the questions. Now we will go to the conclusions by our rapporteur, Yuk Kim.
Thank you, Yvonne. It was really interesting to hear directly from the officers who actually had the experience, the first-person experience of what's happening in the field. Simply 3 takeaways, because we have another repertoire session in the closing after the break. First one will be, it was the existence of women officers in law enforcement that actually increases the law enforcement action, the quality of the law enforcement action. Without that, I mean, we will not have the same level of output without the existence of women. It has been exemplified by a couple of panels. Magna from Uruguay introduced her experience while house searching of a girl who came to her and then started to talk. And another example from Shkipe from Kosovo, she was also talking about, this was something I wasn't really thinking about, I didn't really expect, but in the digital forensics lab, when you are investigating or acquiring data, at that stage, the victim's cooperation is essential. So, but in this case, because the victim was a woman, and then it was more, the victim was more comfortable to talk with Shkipe. So that's, that exemplifies the need of the existence woman. There was a great question from the floor. Happened to be, her name is Floor. So is it really, is it an assumption that having woman is actually a good thing, or should we just leave it as an option? So, I think we have some consensus that it's not always women is easy with communicating with women. I think there should be some sort of availability, so people have different preferences in when they talk to the police officers. I personally believe men also have great empathy and great ability to communicate with anybody a victim or suspect. So I like that. I really like that question from the floor, Janssen. The second takeaway was about things about surrounding the reporting. We have underreporting. The culture is preventing the intimate matters to be discussed in public, especially in Rwanda. It's a big issue. And also Irene from Philippines mentioned about there could be a reporting. The purpose of the reporting is not prosecution. It was takedown. In that case, it might not be too suitable for our traditional criminal justice system because we are basically attribution machine. So takedown is a challenge. And Rwanda also rightly said, without the reporting, there's no criminal statistics. So that is the beginning of every problem. You cannot really handle or address any problem without knowing, without receiving the reports. And Rwanda also mentioned, introduced a possibility of anonymous reporting as a starting point of investigation, which is really interesting for us. And the last takeaway for me from this session, I think it was again from Jessica from Rwanda. She said, before all these discussions about women in cyber, the problem is that we are failing in cybercrime investigation. To me, this is really a big problem, over more of a problem than ignorance of the criminal law or ignorance of the victim support system. But it lowers down the public confidence over the law enforcement activities. So there's no point in the victims to come to the police to report if the crime is not being properly handled. So that's it for me. Thank you. I will come up with more details after the break in the conclusion session. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim, for your conclusions are very clear for us. And thanks to the experiences by law enforcement agencies, investigation and interviews can be more effective. And thanks to the opportunities, women can demonstrate their skills and get better results. And to close this workshop, I leave you with a very interesting phrase that used to finish my interventions. We women are here to stay. In Spanish, las mujeres llegamos para quedarnos. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm afraid that the time has come to conclude this wonderful event, and for some of us, an exciting week. Khurshid from Botswana underlined in very nice words the incredible opportunity provided by this conference for networking, for meeting old friends, making new friends, and learn from each other. But she also underlined the importance of going back home and share with others what we learned here and take action. And this session is supposed to help you doing that. The final plenary is intended to discuss concrete proposals that resulted from various thematic and practitioner workshops in order to draw together the key outcomes of this conference. Now, the Council of Europe will collect all the reports resulted from different workshops, and they will be circulated among the participants. Therefore, I would like to invite the rapporteurs in this session to summarize the discussion and focus on the takeaways and on the proposals that they believe that they should be shared here today, and do that in 5-6 minutes. I will not speak much in between. I give you all the time to you, and then we will conclude our event. Please don't speak fast. It's important to say the key messages that you have from your workshop in a way that everybody will understand and the interpreters to be able to translate. I will start with thematic workshop 4 for logistic reasons. Helen has to leave. The workshop focused on women preventing cybercrime against women. It's an absolutely important, crucial area. It's always better to prevent than cure. And Celine, you have the floor.
Thank you. First of all, thanks to the EU Council and to all the organization for this great event. All the women nowadays had new challenge and opportunities, and it is also why we are here. Yesterday we had a great panel into the afternoon because we saw some concrete steps for prevention, for awareness, for the new challenge, and for all the problems, some problem also regarding the digital evidence that nowadays we have all around the world. So, first of all, we are speaking into yesterday's panel about the awareness for not only the women, but also cybersecurity awareness for all the citizens. For example, Mr. Fatai Samana from Tonga said that we need to help the new generation to change mindset, because this world, especially this on the cybersecurity, on e-crime and so on, is dominated by men. And there is no interest from the female part. So this is why also there are a lot of programs all around the world, and this is why also because I'm here as a Women for Cyber, to became attractive this kind of session of work, because of cybersecurity, e-crime prevention, it's very important phases in this period of our life, especially after the pandemic with the new crimes. And another important outcome that is to prevent the new generation of cyber criminal, because who is the people behind all this kind of e-crime? So yesterday we spoke about the modus operandi of electronic crime in general. We spoke also about the cybercrime prêt-à-porter, that is something that is going to change, because we saw that cybercrime is going to change their modus operandi, because they would like to reach A lot of people, a lot of citizens, all the people, all the citizens, also the unknown people. So this is why we need to bring cybersecurity awareness to all the citizens all around the world. From the basics part, starting, for example, from the schools, or from the parents, from the professor, and so on. And this is also a new approach that the Dutch police took yesterday, and say us, thanks also to Mrs. Floor Jansen from the Netherlands police, to prevent people to start and progress cybercrime career. And this is so important. Then, when we spoke about the cybercrime approach and the victims, also are women, we had yesterday into the panel a specific country from Georgia that say we helped from a cybercrime unit, the police cybercrime unit, and from a public prosecutor. The Georgia, for example, they helped the victim, the offender, through also the psychology part, the social part, the sociologist part, and the legal part. So help the victim to not to be alone, because in this kind of crime, a lot of victims are alone, and that is not possible, because we have a lot of suicide all around the world. So, thanks also to their national framework and to the collaboration with the Ministry of Education, they improve this kind of new approach to prevent the part of the cybercrime prevention. To also protect the women against e-crime as revenge porn, scam, sextortion. A lot of time women are victims, and their offender are the people in their house. And the victim delete immediately, for example, the digital evidence that is so important for consultant, for mobile forensics, to have some evidence from police, from public prosecutor. So the approach also of Ghana, and the public prosecutor of Ghana said, Miss Afua Brown Ayson said that there is very common this part, and they had to improve, thanks also to the national framework, to improve a new encrypted database to have some biometrics, for example, evidences. Now, the new challenge, what is for us? Improve cooperation, of course, but also the digital forensics capability and the cyber intelligence capability all around the world, because I think the new generation, the new approach for us is to bring cybersecurity and all this kind of crime to all the people around the world and to all the new generation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Celine. Indeed, very interesting experience shared yesterday in that workshop that I also attended, and very good ideas. Please send your report to Marta. Council of Europe is collecting all the reports to keep our promise that we will share the reports, the full reports, with the participants. And now I go back to thematic workshop 1, promoting women in technical domains, an area where women are typically underrepresented, including in digital forensics, search, and cybersecurity. And I give the floor to Melissa.
Muchísimas gracias, Cristina. Muy buenas tardes a todos. Mis agradecimientos en primera instancia a todos los organizadores y a los presentes por la oportunidad de primero recibirnos y también por participar acá en esta conferencia internacional sobre la promoción del rol de la mujer en la prevención, investigación y persecución de la ciberdelincuencia. Bien, en el día de ayer tuve el honor, se podría decir así, de participar en un taller en el cual estaban sentadas 5 mujeres en el panel, intercambiando y claramente enriqueciendo nuestros conocimientos sobre cómo podemos promover a las mujeres los ambientes técnicos desde diferentes perspectivas, tanto como CERT, como fiscales y autoridades reguladoras. A través del desarrollo de este taller pudimos entender cuáles son algunos de los principales obstáculos que hoy en día como mujeres tenemos que enfrentar para progresar en ambientes técnicos y cómo podemos entonces contrarrestar estos impedimentos. Para esto, pude identificar 3 aspectos claves con el fin de que le podamos poner un nombre y una cara a estas dificultades. Hablamos primero de educación. Si bien es cierto que desde hace un tiempo hasta hoy, las mujeres hemos estado integrándonos en las divergentes disciplinas como ciencias, tecnologías, ingenierías y matemáticas, pero todavía se puede observar un factor que retiene que más sean integradas, que más vengan a unirse a nosotros. Esto se debe a que debemos crear motivación a las niñas desde muy temprana edad, incentivarlas a estudiar continuamente para estar a la vanguardia de los cambios constantes de la tecnología y sus contrapartes, pero sobre todo exponerlas a otras mujeres del ambiente para que sirvan como ejemplo e ilustración de que tenemos las mismas capacidades y podemos adquirir las mismas habilidades que los hombres del área, claramente. Quisiera también agregar aquí un aspecto que con frecuencia vemos en el área. Este es el miedo a preguntar por miedo a ser cuestionadas. Esto lo podemos ver con frecuencia en los ambientes técnicos, por ejemplo, el forense, en los mismos CERTs, en cyber en sí, donde actualmente predominan más los hombres en esta área, cosa que confío va a cambiar después de esta conferencia. Por lo que aquí resalto lo siguiente, que los líderes no nacemos sabiendo. Preguntamos, y preguntar cuántas veces sea necesario no es denigrante, sino es algo admirador. Otra palabra clave que se pudo tratar acá en este panel es el liderazgo. Es un sentido de alta relevancia demostrar ese apoyo mutuo entre mujeres, ya que hay una realidad que nos presenta y es aquella en donde tendemos nosotras mismas a competir entre nosotras mismas. Y esto se convierte en una barrera, en una pared, la cual nos impide transmitir nuestras experiencias, conocimientos y expertise, y también esa confianza en nuestras habilidades y capacidades como profesionales en el área. Por último, pero claramente no menos importante, tenemos un reto como mujeres. Tenemos un reto que asumir al cual nos enfrentamos diariamente. Combatir y erradicar por completo ese estereotipo que ha estado entre nosotros y nosotras por mucho tiempo ya. Hoy debe ser el día en que deseamos cambiar de manera radical ese pensamiento, contribuyendo al crecimiento de nuestras Cyberwomen a través de capacitaciones, eventos, conferencias, donde tengamos la oportunidad de instruirles a las más jóvenes que también pueden trabajar en cualquier área STEM. No hay una mejor forma, señores, de aprender que con el ejemplo. Finalmente, es importante resaltar que no solo nos encarguemos de promover la inclusión e integración de las más mujeres en estos ámbitos técnicos, también debemos encargarnos de motivarlas a que se queden. Como líderes tenemos en nuestro poder lo que yo considero es lo más importante, el conocimiento. Con esta única herramienta no es suficiente para asumir ese reto constantemente de realizar programas de intercambio de información e influencias positivas para que así podamos fortalecer en la formación y desarrollo y poder cumplir con nuestro objetivo, introducir nuevos cambios. Muchísimas gracias.
Very strong messages, excellent. Thank you very much. Now for thematic workshop 2, combating cyber violence against women and girls. To Miriam, where are the gaps and what are the tools?
Muchas gracias de nuevo por permitirme estar aquí. Como dije ayer, es un privilegio y, por tanto, agradezco al Consejo de Europa y a todos los integrantes y organizadores del evento esta posibilidad. Respecto al taller en materia de ciberviolencia de género, creo que si hubo algo unánime en lo que se dijo ayer es la importancia de este problema en sus distintas manifestaciones a lo largo y ancho de los distintos países y de los distintos ámbitos jurídicos que se vieron representados en el taller. Por poner un ejemplo, se mencionaron específicamente el aumento de casos de acoso por las representantes de Brasil y de Panamá, o el representante de Moldavia habló de la compleja relación de los menores con la red. Dentro de estas lagunas o de estos retos que todavía tenemos en la lucha contra la ciberviolencia de género, se mencionó también otras cuestiones importantes como son, en primer término, la falta de referencia al contexto digital en la legislación. Cuando las leyes no se refieren específicamente al ámbito digital con las particularidades que tiene el mismo, resulta en ocasiones más difícil para los jueces admitir o conseguir estas condenas. También es un elemento que supone un desafío específico la necesidad de contar con prueba electrónica, como es lo obvio por el contexto en el que estamos. La necesidad de preservación de esta prueba, la necesidad de solicitarla a proveedores de servicios nacionales o extranjeros presentan particularidades específicas a las que debemos dirigirnos y que debemos atender para lograr el éxito en este tipo de procesos. También la necesidad de formación de los operadores jurídicos, tanto una formación jurídica, técnica, como una formación en sensibilización que evite una doble victimización de quien ya ha sido víctima de un delito. Y además hay que contar, como ya he dicho, con los proveedores de servicios, que si bien en algunos ámbitos, como el caso de las imágenes de menores abusados, ya están colaborando activamente con las fuerzas y cuerpos de seguridad y con la Fiscalía, en otros ámbitos, como se mencionó ayer, en el caso de los adultos, no se está consiguiendo o todavía, digamos, es un campo a explorar, a mejorar. Y de aquí extraemos las buenas prácticas que se mencionaron en el taller que se están ya llevando a cabo. En primer término, se han llevado a cabo cambios en la legislación nacional. Por ejemplo, en Brasil, este procedimiento ha pasado a ser de carácter público, lo que ha permitido evitar a las víctimas el tener que, además, sufragar los gastos de un abogado. Es cierto que se está consiguiendo utilizar, donde no hay una legislación específica, la legislación tradicional, digamos, para perseguir este tipo de delitos y que se han aprobado leyes como la Ley de Cibercrimen de Comunicaciones Maliciosas en Jamaica. En Brasil se ha mejorado el sistema de análisis forense digital. En Moldavia se ha creado la red de preservación, también una red de puntos de contacto 24/7, o se han introducido conceptos nuevos como el de clonación. También se están llevando a cabo actividades de formación, tanto a los profesionales como a los menores, pues son nuestro futuro y es necesario concienciar sobre la repercusión que puede tener el uso de las redes sociales, el uso de Internet para su vida. Se mencionaron exitosos ejemplos de puesta en práctica de las posibilidades que ofrece la cooperación internacional, como en un caso de extorsión en Jamaica. Se mencionó también la importancia de la ejemplificación a través de sentencias pioneras que mandan un mensaje sobre la gravedad de estas conductas, poniéndose ejemplos de penas realmente altas, incluso de 7 años de prisión. Y digamos, aspectos más novedosos, se mencionaron también la introducción de consecuencias accesorias del delito que van específicamente enfocadas a las víctimas, como la prohibición de acercarse y comunicarse. Para concluir y como soluciones de futuro, los key findings que nos pide Marta, podríamos mencionar 3. En primer término, como se extrae de lo que he dicho ya, la necesidad de continuar con el proceso de creación y modificación de la legislación penal, tanto en la tipificación de conductas, donde sería oportuno tener en cuenta la posibilidad de agravar los delitos cuando se constate que hay un elemento discriminatorio, bien por género o bien por orientación sexual, y también en la regulación de los medios procesales que habilitan para la obtención de la prueba electrónica. En segundo término, de estas soluciones sería continuar con estas actividades de formación, como he dicho, tanto en la parte jurídica como en la sensibilización, evitando así superar prejuicios y estereotipos y posibilitando a los profesionales a dirigirse y tratar con las víctimas de la manera más adecuada posible para evitar, como mencioné, la revictimización. Y ello enlaza con, digamos, el último objetivo que podría extraerse de este taller, que es la oportunidad, o más bien la necesidad, de reorientar el proceso penal, no buscando solo la sanción del culpable o del autor de un delito, sino también la verdadera tutela judicial efectiva de la víctima del mismo. Y yo creo que este es más o menos el resumen de lo que hablamos ayer. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Miriam. This is certainly an area where perhaps the Cybercrime Convention Committee can look back. We focused on this area some time ago through working group in the committee and drafted a mapping study on cyber violence. But I think there is room now, and it's mature enough, the discussion to look back into this and do a little bit more. And certainly there is a lot of room to do more in the capacity building projects that are backing up the Budapest Convention. But this is something that we take away from this workshop. Miriam is also in the bureau of the Cybercrime Convention Committee, so we can further discuss that. And now I move to Iris for thematic workshop 3, Women as Victims of Cybercrime, Ensuring Access to Effective Remedies. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you. We had yesterday quite a vivid discussion about women as victims of cybercrime, and a lot of experiences were shared in our workshop yesterday that showed that women are victims of cybercrime to a greater extent than men. There are two factors, at least, that can explain the phenomenon. First, women are less digitally literate than men, while the second factor has to do with the lack of a gender perspective in the cyber defense strategies. It was mentioned also in our workshop from the colleagues that this leads to double victimization on the victims with the support from the public when the institutions are numb. It was also mentioned that we lack the society perception on these forms of crime and victims and the way this aggravates its impact. So the first key takeaway is enhancing digital literacy within our society, but especially among women and girls through education, but also by developing awareness-raising campaigns targeting women and men, girls and boys on the digital violence against women. We also heard that oftentimes digital violence is the preliminary stage to analog threats. Perpetrators aim to instrumentalize all sorts of personal data that would also pose an analog physical threat to the victim, like their physical address, private address, living circumstances, or even the name of their employer. The aim is to increase the effect of their threats, to intimidate those affected as much as possible, and also to enhance the sensation of insecurity in everyday life. This concerns to statements made on social networks like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, but also on smaller platforms and messenger services like Telegram or Reddit. Women are not only the largest, but also one of the most affected group, and most of the times they are attacked solely because they are women, of their gender. We also heard cases when women face difficulties when seeking access to justice due to lack of skills and knowledge on investigation and prosecution of cybercrime against them. Sometimes the lack of prosecution is the absence of specific knowledge about digital phenomenon and the lack of capacities in the law enforcement agencies. That's why many survivors have this feeling that the internet is a legal vacuum, and indeed do the perpetrators. Prosecutors, police, and domestic lawmakers do not acknowledge that we can no longer judge insults and defamations in the digital space by the same legal standard as we do in a dispute between two neighbors. The reason is that there are fundamental differences in scope and impact of digital violence on the victims, but also on the society. Other than in a private space, those affected online face complete and well-organized strangers acting under pseudonyms and often with multi-fake accounts. The defamation is public and stays public as it is extremely difficult to delete content completely from the internet. It was shown yesterday in our workshop, and those are not side effects but intentional consequences of online defamation. An insult or defamation online needs to be judged on these accounts. So the second key takeaway, and my feeling, was that all the participants in our workshop strongly recommended that individuals in police and judiciary who deal with cases of gender-based violence should receive further training on the digital elements of this violence and draw on the knowledge of their colleagues from the cybercrime departments if required. Investigating authorities and law enforcement agencies also need to foster great forensic capabilities and enhance their technical equipment so as to improve the preservation of digital evidence. The legal process should be accompanied with statutory remedies for victims, particularly court-ordered reparation for both restitution and compensation. We also discussed in our workshop that more often than not, violence against women committed in the digital sphere has an international character. Perpetrators can be located anywhere in the world, as well as the private enterprises that store information on the perpetrators or the violent content. That's why we should promote enhanced international cooperation and mutual legal assistance to ensure simplified access to evidence held by service providers, such as subscriber information or the IP address used by the perpetrator. We also heard in the workshop that specialist support services for domestic violence are spending more and more time and energy on counseling on this aspect of abuse. This is time and energy that they do not have because of the problems that most of the service providers have with the funding, but also with the ever-changing tactics of domestic abusers. So, and there we go with the third key takeaway, it is necessary to equip existing women specialist support services with the financial and human resources to offer holistic services, including legal and technical advice on the removal of harmful online content. Existing support measures need to be equipped with training and necessary resources to respond to the cybercrime against women so that the digitalization of violence can be addressed in their counseling work. Only in this way we can ensure the role of specialist support services in guiding women through prosecution process and the ways in which that support can practically facilitate their access to justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Iris, for these valuable proposals. And now we move to practitioner workshops. The first one, experience and opportunities from the policymakers and legislator perspective. And everybody underlined the importance of the legislation when we discussed this topic and the fact that comprehensive legislation is the foundation of the criminal justice response to cybercrime. How women can better contribute to the development of the legislation, how laws and policies may need to be adapted to better address cybercrime against women. It was some of the questions that were supposed to respond in this workshop. And I have Peter.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Indeed, we had a very engaging and interactive session. I would like to, at the outset, in fact, highlight what the three takeaways were that I identified at the conclusion of it. And then what I'd like to do is, I know we're limited for time, is expand a bit on some of these specific issues that you touched upon, Chair. I think what we heard from all of the participants was a very diverse range of experiences that they have had. We had participants from Botswana, Colombia, Spain, Barbados, Sierra Leone. What resonated, what I found particularly striking was, although these are individuals, both members of parliament, but also government officials from widely different countries, many of them have very similar experiences, and I think that was very telling in terms of the not only the individual professional experiences they have, but more specifically the challenges. And I think as a first takeaway from our event, it's accurate to say that while there are certainly many opportunities that have been identified, those opportunities come with challenges. And I would say most of our workshop was devoted to identifying what those challenges were, but also I think a very productive review of what the solutions can be. And I think that was a second takeaway. Yes, there are very significant challenges here. No one is under any illusions there. But the challenges, for the most part, are not insurmountable. There are many stakeholders out there who are willing to assist, are assisting, and can assist in the future. And so there was, I think, a recognition, not just on the part of the panels, but also all the participants in the room following with the discussion we had, that those challenges largely can be addressed in identifying the solutions. I think the third takeaway coming out was that, unsurprisingly, obviously, that there was a need to look at all of these solutions through a gender prism. I mean, that there was, unfortunately, one of these, and I'll come to these specific issues very shortly, that the key problem in so many houses of parliament, but not confined to that, is that there is just a lack of awareness, in fact, in some instances, a total indifference to promoting to gender sensitizing legislation, not only to introducing it, but also to implementing it. And that's, that I think is the third takeaway, that we have to look at that. A few key points, and I want to mention, I'm mentioning these also because not only did they surface in our meeting earlier today, I think just as, if not even more importantly, these are issues that came up. They echoed comments that in fact have been made in many of the other sessions that we've had, which I think reinforces the importance of this. Education and training. I think I must have been in at least 2 or 3 different workshops yesterday where this was highlighted again and again. And MPs, members of parliament, government officials are no different to anyone else. Everyone needs training, and the sooner the better. I mean, yesterday I know we heard a discussion about education programs even at school levels and so on. But that's a perennial and a constant need. It cannot be a once-off thing. In order to be sustainable, it has to be something that has to be worked on all the time. I think at least 4 of the panelists in our particular workshop a little earlier this morning highlighted the importance that although they are legislators and policymakers, they were the first to recognize and acknowledge the importance of engaging all stakeholders. This is something that's often said. It's almost a cliche, but it's true. And that ties in with this whole notion of the need to take a holistic approach, which I think really ran through this. The other point, and I think you actually just touched upon this in your opening remarks, Jeff, legislators, what do legislators do? They make laws. Actually, within our organization, we encourage legislators to be advocates as well. But for the purpose of our workshop, one of the challenges that was highlighted in particular is that members of parliament often find themselves in a situation where they're having to deal with or to draft legislation addressing threats that come up extremely quickly, are urgent, and unfortunately they work in a milieu, an environment which is, I don't know what the word is, but I would say almost antithetical to finding quick, easy, and effective solutions, and that's a real challenge that they are confronting and is there. I think the last point I'll make is one that perhaps is self-evident. Members of parliament, government officials are also victims of cybercrime. Members of parliament, many parliaments around the world have been subject to cyber attacks as well, and including cyberbullying and cyber harassment of female members of parliament in particular. So these are, when legislators are dealing with these issues, they're not really working in an abstract. These are not esoteric issues. Many of them have been victims themselves of these crimes. So I think I'd conclude on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter, for your very interesting points. And now we have workshop 2, 3, and 4 that look from different perspectives, prosecution, law enforcement, and judges, to more or less the same questions: how women are contributed to effective investigation, prosecution, and adjudication of cybercrime cases. What is needed to further promote the role of women in this sphere, and how to improve the prosecution and adjudication of cybercrime against women. And I give the floor first for the workshop 2, from the prosecution perspective, to Ranjani.
Thank you for a final opportunity to present at this wonderful conference. It was a pleasure to be involved in this morning's session with a panel of very impressive prosecutors. I think the three key messages we can take away from the session is that the representation of women working to fight cybercrime, particularly within the legal space, is on the rise. Women are increasingly employed in highly visible positions with real power. So we must continue this push for female representation at all levels via education and training. Secondly, there's a need to facilitate victims' access to justice through a variety of means, to take a sensitive and holistic approach to victim needs. And thirdly, there is a strong will for structural and institutional change. There have been important legal reforms, but work remains to be done in strengthening legal frameworks. So I'll just briefly highlight some country-specific information and examples that go to these points. In the Philippines, we heard that there is an impressive track record in terms of employing women in key criminal justice roles. So there have been 2 women Chief Justices, 3 women Secretaries of Justice, and women operating in all important roles in all levels of the profession. They have gender-blind recruitment in the Philippines, so there's no disparity in opportunities, training and promotional opportunities for women prosecutors, which just goes to show how skilled women are in this area. There have been some significant legal changes in the Philippines regarding the collection of electronic evidence, which is another significant theme to emerge from the session, or the difficulties in collecting electronic evidence. And also around the videotape testimony for child witnesses. Another theme that came through strongly throughout the session was that women have the soft skills that are so crucial in prosecuting cybercrime. If I just turn briefly to the intervention from our colleague from Spain, again, the importance of appointing women in positions of responsibility in terms of cybersecurity was highlighted. Significant efforts to do away with the gender gap are underway in the prosecutor's office. So in Spain, more than 50% of the prosecutors are women, and all 3 IT prosecutors are women. We heard again about the paramount importance of the need to increase reporting, and one way to do this is to ensure the quick takedown of illegal content. And through a number of sessions, I've heard that for victims, the number 1 priority is often getting the images removed. In Spain, there is a provision that came in 2002 that allowed for the prosecutor's office to have content removed even before the final decision of the court. From Albania, we heard about the role of the women in prosecution. Significant reforms were undertaken in 2016 to tackle corruption and increase public confidence. So they've had 2 women as heads of prosecution, and more than half of upcoming prosecutors are women. Again, we heard prosecution of crimes is only part of the puzzle. We need to raise awareness of cybercrimes and their consequences and to ensure victims can access their rights. So a very positive example from Albania is that access to justice is facilitated through free legal aid for victims, free counselling and waiving of court fees. There was discussion of capacity building and, again, the highlighting of international cooperation. From Benin, we heard there was a great deal of political will to fight against cyber violence, and there have been important institutional and structural reforms. Interestingly, in Benin, there's been an increase in both women who have come forward to report cybercrime and women who have been convicted for these sort of offences. So in Benin, they've set up a National Institute for Women, which provides services in relation to gender-based violence. So it works in synergy with investigators and prosecutors. The Institute provides support, including financial and social support, even if a prosecution doesn't take place. So one other thing that was touched upon was the importance of specialist training for prosecutors to deal with victims of cyber violence. So this requires a very specialist skill set. Again, this is where women's soft skills may come to the fore: empathy, emotional intelligence, effective communication. However, this alone is not enough, and prosecutors must be afforded appropriate training. So finally, it's clear that although we all operate under different legal systems, there's an undeniable commonality to the challenges we face and must continue to work on. So the quick takedown of illegal electronic material, the retention and collection of electronic evidence, and the need to sensitively deal with victims of this crime type. It's equally clear that the value of international cooperation cannot be overstated, and that women prosecutors are fearless campaigners for real change within their jurisdictions. So that is why these sort of forums are so invaluable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. I can see that you have a detailed, Melissa, detailed report. You have a detailed report. Please send it. It's a lot of information, valuable information there, and we have to share with all the participants. Same questions from the law enforcement perspective to Ukim. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Christina. Personally, when I was traveling to Costa Rica, I was rather skeptical about the topic Marta gave me. It was a role of woman in cyber. And I was thinking, this is about interest, of the difference in interest between boys and girls. When you go to a car repair, you have boys because boys are more interested in cars, right? So having more women in car repair will not really bring us anywhere better than that. But through the thematic workshops and practitioners workshop, I have my understanding of this topic has significantly improved, I would say. I learned much more to this topic, and at least for me, I think this workshop was successful. I would like to congratulate you and the Council of Europe. Sorry. So in the workshop, practitioners workshop 3, on law enforcement practitioners workshop, we had 3 key takeaways, and the first one is can be summarized. We had a consensus that having a woman in law enforcement available will increase the law enforcement's performance. I'm not saying more women, better performance, but having availability of a woman, especially when it comes to victims' interview, it's very, very a key factor for the success of the output, law enforcement output. So there was several experiences from the panel members. Uruguay was panel from Uruguay introduced her experience when she was performing house search. It was a girl, self-produced images uploading, and then she was really intimidated when the search was happening, and then she came to her, and then she could actually open up. And that was a typical case that we actually can expect why having women is so important in cyber. And there has been some discussion after one question from the floor. The question from the floor was, is it an assumption, is this just an assumption where that saying is always woman who communicates better with women? Is it a fact? Is it the fact, or is it just assumption? And then the consensus was we should have option for the victim or the subject of our interview to choose what she or he feels more comfortable. There was one mentioning where there was a lady, victim, refused to talk to a woman officer. She asked the woman officer to go out and then chose to talk to a male officer. So it's not like one answer to all the problems. So, having the availability of those variety or of choices for allowing the victims to choose will be more efficient. And about this technical side of the field, like forensic field, it's dominated by male officers, forensic field. But there was one example which was really interesting from Kosovo. In the digital forensics, in the process of her digital forensics on victim's phone, the victim could actually cooperate with the female officer rather than the male officers. So, the female officers can actually search through the victim's phone and then collect necessary information more efficiently. So that was really tremendously helpful. So the consensus is having the officers more both men and women in many areas of law enforcement will be helpful for law enforcement performance. That was the first key takeaway for me. And then the second one is surrounding the victims' reporting. The problem is the underreporting, and then we sort of guess that this is from the cultural reasons. We don't want to speak intimate issues in public. That is why we are having less reports, which actually leads to lack of crime statistics. And then that will again exacerbate our capability to address the issues. So that is a big problem. And also there are some reports coming from the victim, which is the victim's not really seeking for criminal justice. They just want takedown of the contents from the internet. So this doesn't really fit with the traditional law enforcement or criminal justice systems where we focus on arresting somebody rather than the other things. So we have challenges there. And also there was a comment from the floor where victims' participation, cooperation is essential in successful conviction. So how can we do better about this? There was one case introduced by a panel from Rwanda, reporting system, but anonymized reporting system where victims can actually just report, and then the law enforcement actually approach to the victim. That is one interesting example. And also awareness raising, education, and also support to victim support. One thing that we didn't really talk much about was a lot of victim support is surrounding psychological support and financial support or procedural support, but we didn't really talk too much about the issue of the victim being ostracized by the close families of friends, and then these are cultural issues, so we are not really touching upon these issues, but we are. I think that is something that we really didn't focus or discuss. So we have some ways to go. And then the last key takeaway is before we have the problem issues of a woman, we think there was one panel who had a very strong message. We are failing in cybercrime investigation, and that is the bigger problem than having less women. There was a panel, two panels talking it's difficult to prosecute and investigate cybercriminals, and it's difficult to do international cooperation, cooperating with foreign ISPs, and these all leads to the same problem that we discussed in the previous forum of this week, 0.1% problem where we are not really prosecuting enough criminals. And this will lead to lower degraded public confidence on criminal justice system, which will eventually lead to less reporting because there's no point in reporting when you don't get the result from the law enforcement. So the performance of the investigation is a key issue. Without those higher performance of law enforcement, other measures that we have found kind of will not really have the designed impact. So I think Budapest Convention and then the additional protocols will be useful in this area, to address this problem of degraded law enforcement, especially cybercrime investigation. And with that backdrop, we can actually think about public awareness raising, and then education, and then the victim support, and all the other things. That's what we concluded. And so there are more work to do for the Council of Europe, and also the Interpol, and everyone in this room. So we, Interpol, we stand ready to join that effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joachim, for your points and also the links that you make with the previous event that we organized on fighting cybercrime and obtaining electronic evidence. Indeed, if we increase our performance to investigate cybercrime in general, that will have certainly a positive impact on fighting, drawing lessons in order to combating crimes against women. More work for the Council of Europe, but Interpol is a very strong partner of the Council of Europe, so in a way he gives himself some work there. Yeah, very interesting point. And also some ideas for follow-up, to organize more events for some topics that we didn't have enough time to discuss. And now, the final words from Hanya from the judge perspective.
Good morning. Let me thank you again for this opportunity. I want to thank the Council of Europe and all the co-hosting organizations for this wonderful event. I'm a judge. I handle cybercrime cases. I handle cyber violence cases, and I learned a lot. I know that I will come back home with a wider vision of this problem, and I will try to spread the information as possible as it could be. As for the takeaway for this session, the first takeaway seems obvious. But if we want women to have a role in adjudication cybercrime, they need to be there. Women need to be present in the judiciary. They need to be present there to issue the necessary orders to collect electronic evidence, to preserve electronic evidence, to lead the investigation, and to adjudicate cybercrime cases, especially sensitive ones with women victims. Ensuring the female representation in the criminal justice system is more crucial when, unfortunately, cybercrime is combined with gender violence-related cases. In fact, participants said that a female victim of sexual and gender-based violence is unlikely to pursue a case if the court is staffed predominantly by male jurists. The panelists, all of them, acknowledged that women judges are already playing an active role in the effective adjudication of cybercrime, by being appointed in some courts even more than men in judicial positions that allow them to apply these principles. We heard a lot of good examples. 2/3 of the judges in Mauritius are women, even at the Supreme Court. The Chief Justice also is a woman there. Philippines presented some great numbers regarding women representation in cybercrime courts. But we need to acknowledge also the barriers regarding the misrepresentation in women in cyber cases in some countries. In some countries, women are not represented either in quantity or in quality. They don't have higher positions. Causes could be different, maybe gender stereotype, maybe other reasons, but we need to work on that. And effective responses to these concerns require international and national collaboration. Empowering women with technology knowledge would be excellent, capacity building, specializations, and also enhancing, integrating gender issues into international organizations, and definitely eliminating stereotypes that pigeonhole women in specific areas of law or at certain levels with the judicial hierarchy. Now, for the second takeaway, we need to check what are the challenges that magistrates and judges face in adjudicating cybercrime cases against women. We are talking here about sextortion, pornography, cyberstalking, non-consensual picture sharing. We have some general challenges that are common to all cases, and some gender-specific challenges. For the general challenges, we know we have the delay in the prosecution, the lack of sufficient and competent forensic experts to lead the analysis in some countries, lack of resources, lack of expertise regarding data preservation, and my colleagues mentioned the problem of evolving technology. They take capacity building and technology evolves. They need more trainings. We also have some gender-specific challenges, especially in relation to cybercrime with sexual connotation. The first problem is the anonymity of the offender. It's provided by technology. The second is the reluctance of women to testify because of social stigma and victimization. So we don't have only the problem of reporting. Even if they report, they don't want to testify. In fact, the lack of psychological support during criminal proceedings and the lack of information regarding reporting mechanism discourage women to report. The third takeaway, how to make adjudication of cases of cybercrime against women more effective. Actually, this is an international problem, and someone, I don't remember who, said yesterday, we cannot tackle international problems with national solutions. So we need the cooperation of everyone, states, internet service providers, and all stakeholders. And it was mentioned during my presentation that also men should help women in order to do that. First, we need a supportive legal framework. We need to ratify all the conventions related to gender violence, and we need laws. If we don't have effective laws, as much training as we take, we cannot do anything. Judges apply the laws. We need accessible reporting mechanism. We all talked about reporting. Women don't report. We need friendly reporting mechanism. We need reporting mechanisms that are easy to find. Also, we talked a lot about removal of harmful content. Actually, service providers need to post that clearly, how to ask them to remove the content. Because yes, the judiciary can do that, the prosecutor can do that, but the victim themselves can do that. They can ask for the removal of the illicit content. We need awareness. We need to educate women on the national level on the rights offered by their law in regards to procedural law. For example, they need to know that hearings in camera is possible in some legal systems. And finally, we always focus on that. We need capacity building. We need capacity building definitely in cybercrime and electronic evidence, but not only that. In that area, we need capacity building in data privacy, because we don't want the judges or the police officers to share these pictures. We need capacity building for promoting the application of the restrictive measures. And we need capacity building for gender awareness. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Hania. It's a very nice report, sort of concluding remarks, and I'm very happy that you spoke in the end. Now, I thank you all for excellent reports. Many ideas and experiences have been discussed these 2 days, and I'm sure that we all leave with a lot of information from this conference. Adapting solutions to the local realities, promote diversity and inclusion in your own organization to ensure gender balance representation. Very important and very often mentioned, review the legislation, review and strengthen the legislation in this area and involve women in the process. This is something that we as a Cybercrime Convention Committee, but capacity building also around Budapest Convention, we can help internationally. Prevention is a crucial component. It's always better to prevent than cure. You heard that very often. Awareness and training to change mentality, taking into account social realities, and education that starts at the very early stage with not only teaching the girls to become empowered women, but also teaching the boys to become men that will respect women. So I'm very, very grateful that I participated in this event and that I was here this week. I learned so much from you. I'm always privileged and happy to be back in Costa Rica, a country that, in my opinion, gives an example for the world. And now I have the pleasure to invite Alexander and Marta to conclude this wonderful event.
Thank you. If I say that Marta is the soul of this conference, she will say there are many souls, but she's the chief soul in a way. Marta, please, you start. You deserve it.
Thank you very much, Alexander. And indeed, I do absolutely have to start by thanking the small but perfectly formed dream team of women without whom this event would absolutely not have been possible. So to my colleagues in Bucharest, in Strasbourg, but also our newfound colleagues here in Costa Rica from the Public Ministry, from the Legislative Assembly, Eugenia and her team here at the venue and with the hotels, really just huge thanks for all of the hard work that you put in to make sure that everyone could be here and contribute to this event. When I look back at the process of organizing this event, but of course over the last day and a half, the three words that really stick with me are passion, expertise, and determination. And I think we've seen that from beginning to end. The enthusiasm and passion that you all showed to support this event, to co-host the workshops, to be speakers, to be moderators, to be rapporteurs, to be participants, was so striking and gave us so much power during the difficult times of bringing everything together at the organizational stage. So really, thank you very much for that. And then that was also very much translated through to the different sessions here in Costa Rica. I've really been inspired by the breadth and depth of expertise amongst this group of groundbreaking women and men who are driving change in their countries and their institutions to make the criminal justice response to cybercrime more effective, including the response, of course, to those types of cybercrime that do particularly affect and target women. So the passion for the issue, the determination to drive change has really been inspiring. But to paraphrase a quote from Thomas Edison, which today, when I looked it up to make sure I'd got it right, I saw an article saying that, in fact, it should have been credited to a woman. So there we go, that's the lesson. And that is that success is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. I think over the last day and a half, I hope you also feel, have had a huge injection of inspiration. And that's really down to all of you. But of course, now comes the perspiration. And so I really hope that when you return home, that you can get to work in taking forward some of the ideas, the recommendations, and the best practices that you've heard across all of the different sessions, but particularly well encapsulated in this concluding session. So do stay in touch, build on the connections, and really take forward some of the good ideas that have been shared. Because from our perspective, when we were organizing this conference, we always wanted it to be more of a beginning rather than an end. Now we are at the end of the beginning, perhaps, with the conclusion of this conference, but we really do want to make sure that this is a process that continues. In that vein, I'm delighted then to give the floor back to Alexander, who can have a few more ideas about some of the upcoming perspiration from the side of the Council of Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And here are some upcoming ideas, upcoming actions. Lunch is served after this session. That's the first action. After the lunch, those leaving tomorrow, please go to the reception desk out here to check your departure times for the transfers to the airport tomorrow. But after the lunch, so around 2:30, you could check it. This has been also for me personally a most rewarding event with so many friends and partners coming together from around the world here in Costa Rica. And we've heard lots of powerful statements. We have loads of ideas that we can take with us to sweat, as Marta said, when implementing those. The event itself, in my opinion, has produced results because we now know each other. We have learned a lot. I have myself learned a lot during this week, so there are results already now. We don't have to point at future actions and future results. We have achieved a lot the last few days here in Costa Rica. We will also on our side follow up with our partners to organize follow-up activities. There is one already on the 5th of December together with Grevio, a conference on digital violence against women that we do in Strasbourg. The President of Iceland will participate in that event. We will do many other things in the coming weeks and months, not alone, but with all of you. And perhaps there's one concrete tool, because I'm always looking for something concrete, because we can all have nice and flowery words, but we also need to be concrete. And one thing that we have already is a cyber violence, an online resource on cyber violence. You have it here, you can look it up on our cybercrime website, you can link to it. I would invite all of you to send us whatever you have, materials, links to laws, information about special investigative units dealing with cyber violence, violence against women, and so forth. Anything you have. If you have activities that you are planning, that you are scheduled to have, send us the information, we put it there. They can also help you promote your activities, create some public relations, link you up with experts if needed. So there are many things we can do to further improve this tool. It's there. We just have to feed it now with your information. We also have another judicial training platform that we are finalizing, and that one can then also be used for you to network with each other, to park also additional materials there and have a dialogue in the future. So it's something very concrete that we have already and that we can build upon. Now, a long list of thanks. But I think we should go through that. So thank you to our partners here in Costa Rica, from the Legislative Assembly of Costa Rica, from the Public Prosecutor's Office of Costa Rica, from European Union, the EU Cybernet, the US Department of Justice, the Council of Europe, Division on Violence Against Women, and Grevio, and the president of Grevio is here, great, African Union Commission, the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise, the International Association of Prosecutors, the International Association of Police Women, the International Association of Women Judges, Parliamentarians for Global Action, and I think there are many more that contributed and co-organized this conference or the different workshops and sessions that we had. Thank you also to all the moderators, to the speakers, to the rapporteurs. Thanks to all of you for coming here to Costa Rica for this event. And some of you have come from a very long way, from a very long distance. It's just great to have you all here in this event. I already thanked Marta. I'll give her a special applause, nevertheless. And also the other team that has come here to Costa Rica to work on this from our Bucharest office or from our Strasbourg office. We have Anna, Catalina, Eli, Elena, Florian, Irina, but also, as Marta said earlier, colleagues in Bucharest, in Strasbourg, that have been working on this also during this week and also in recent months to make this happen. But then we have extended our team in a way. We also had Joey from the EU delegation. Joey sitting over there. I mean, she's not working with us really, but she was there on Sunday and helping us. She's been translating if necessary. She's also become part of this team. We have Don Miguel from the Public Prosecutor's Office. Ah, there. He is the key person here in Costa Rica. Stand up. And we have Eugenia. Where is she? She's out there organizing everything, making sure that the lunch is served. She has been working with us as a contractor in a way, but she has been really great in organizing this whole thing. She has been sweating a lot, in particular before the event, to make sure that everything is set up, that all contracts are signed on time. We have Hexa, where is he? Also out there organizing. So there's so many people in the background that have been working on this. Then we have two colleagues that used to work in my team in Bucharest that left us, but then came back to help us in this event. We have Alexandra, who's now with GFCE. We have, and since Jana, who ran away to Interpol in Singapore. But when it came to putting together the tote bags, they were all there working with us and not caring about where they are now and so on. They were all part of the same team. I think most time here in Costa Rica, you spend with the bus drivers. So we should also thank all the bus drivers for taking us safely and with lots of skills and a lot of patience to make sure that we can all be here and back in our hotels when needed. And also thank you to the interpreters that gave us a voice here. So we are almost there. Many years ago, it was around 2008, we had a conference together with the OAS, with the US Department of Justice in Colombia. Christina was there with us. And there at the reception desk of the hotel, we met somebody from Costa Rica. It was his birthday on that day. And he has become a champion here in Costa Rica to push year after year to have the legislation in place, to have Costa Rica join eventually the Budapest Convention. Francisco, where are you? Francisco, stand up. He is evidence that individuals make a difference. Francisco, there were one or two other people, became champions of change here in Costa Rica. All of you, we expect to be champions of change. You are our partners, but you are also in your own capacity, in your own individual capacity, we expect you to make a difference, to make a change for a better world, for a more just world, where women protect society against cybercrime, and where women are also protected against cybercrime. Let's cooperate, let's stay connected. Thank you.